The sea never forgets. They say that the waves whisper if you listen long enough, sibilant, ancient tongues that carry the voices of the drowned. For Thomas Graye, the whispers began the night he inherited Blackthorn Manor. The letter arrived on wax-stamped vellum, delivered by courier. Inside, black ink in a looping, precise hand, to Mr. Thomas Edwin Graye. It is with solemn responsibility that we inform you of the passing of your great-uncle, Reginald Ashcroft Graye, and the transfer of his estate to your name. The property Blackthorn Manor lies on the coast of Dunsmouth, Massachusetts. Enclosed, please find the deed and keys. We urge you to take immediate possession. Thomas didn't remember ever hearing of Reginald Ashcroft Graye. His own father never spoke of extended family. Curious and jobless, Thomas took a flight from Chicago to Boston, then rented a rusting sedan and drove north through rain-soaked pines and crumbling coastal roads. Blackthorn Manor stood like a carcass of stone and wood, high above the Atlantic on a jagged cliff. The wind howled like wolves. The 3-story house was ringed by salt-gnarled trees and a wrought iron fence, its gate hanging askew. The inside was worse. Mildew crept along wallpaper like frostbite. Portraits of long-dead men glowered from frames, their eyes sunken with varnish. The house groaned with every footstep. And yet, the study was pristine. Polished mahogany shelves lined with leather-bound tomes, a globe with yellowed oceans, and a roll-top desk holding a journal. The name etched into the cover, Reginald A. Graye. Thomas cracked it open. The first entry read, September 3rd, 1903. The pact is done. The deep one slumbers beneath the basalt altar. My bloodline is secured. My debt, however, eternal. Thomas laughed nervously. What is this? Lovecraft fan fiction? That night, the whispers began. The first dream was of water, inky black, vast and cold. A voice beneath the waves said his name. Thomas awoke in sweat, the whisper still echoing. He explored the manor by daylight. In the basement, he found a false wall behind a wine rack. A narrow stone stairwell led downward beyond the foundation, damp, tight, and spiraling. At the bottom, a hidden chapel, barnacle-encrusted walls, a dais of carved stone, and a pit sealed with a rusted grate. Around the rim, the words in Latin, Sanguinem pro sanguine, Vinctus in aeternum, blood for blood, bound in eternity. Suddenly, a vision gripped him. A man in black robes, Reginald, slicing his palm, letting blood drip into the pit as he chanted. Thomas stumbled back. His hand was bleeding. He hadn't touched anything. The next morning, Thomas wandered the west wing of the manor, following a draft through a corridor lined with moldy oil paintings. He paused before a mirror warped by time, its surface cracked. Behind it, he noticed a gap in the wall. Pulling the mirror aside, he found a door with a handle like a spine segment. Inside, a small, dust-choked room. Candles long burned to wax nubs, strange bones arranged in patterns on the floor, symbols carved into the walls, some deep enough to draw blood. A book lay open on a pedestal, the title long faded. Inside were anatomical drawings, twisted, inhuman forms, and annotations in a hand he recognized from the journal, Reginald's. The margins were filled with frantic phrases. It watches through water. It knows when we dream. At the back, a single page titled, The Tide Ritual. The steps were incomplete, ink smudged by what looked like tears or seawater. Thomas pocketed the page, heart pounding. The room was cold as the grave. When he turned to leave, the door shut on its own. It took him 3 hours to get it back open. Over the next days, Thomas read the journal. Reginald had been a cultist. The Graye line had once been dwindling, until Reginald made a pact with something called Nihaz Ulun, a being of the trench deep beneath Dunsmouth Bay. In exchange for protection and power, Reginald offered a bloodline. The Graye family would thrive, but each generation would owe. Reginald had tried to flee it. The manor had been sealed, but the debt remained. Thomas began to change. He heard the sea in his veins, salt crusted his skin. He began sleepwalking, waking on the cliffs, staring into the surf below. One night, he found an old photograph in the attic, Reginald with townsfolk, miners, clergy, fishermen, all smiling, all now long dead, or so he thought. Driven by a need he couldn't explain, Thomas went into town. Dunsmouth was grey and crumbling, shops shuttered, a church rotting under moss, yet the townsfolk stared at him with recognition and hatred. At the tavern, an old man grabbed his collar. "You're his blood. Get out before the sea takes you too." A barmaid whispered that Reginald's pact had cursed the town. Storms, sinkings, barren wombs. Generations paid for his deal. "They say he didn't give the god what it wanted," she said. "Not just blood, innocence. He tricked it. It never forgot." Later, Thomas wandered the shoreline, watching fishermen casting nets into barren water. He spotted a boy drawing symbols in the sand, ones from the chapel. The child met his gaze and his eyes were entirely black. The boy said, "It remembers you." Thomas returned to the manor shaken. That night, lightning struck the cliffside. The manor trembled. From the pit below, something stirred. Thomas dreamed of Reginald again, this time flayed and screaming. The thing beneath the grate had risen, tentacled, eyeless, vast. It coiled around the altar. "You owe me what he promised," it said. Thomas awoke in blood. His own? He wasn't sure. He fled to Boston, but the whispers followed. On the subway, in the hotel sink, every time he looked in a mirror, the sea gazed back. Then the envelope arrived, a second journal, Reginald's last confessions. Inside, a map and a ritual. Only the pact broken by the blood's descendant can end it, he read. But it requires the offering refused. Thomas understood. He had to finish what Reginald fled from. He returned to Dunsmouth. The chapel awaited. The pit was open now. A salt wind blew up from it. Chanting rose in his mind. Thomas lit the candles, drew the sigils. The final page read, "Give it what was denied, the blood of the Graye child, innocent, willing." He had no child, no innocence. But there was another way. He stood at the edge of the pit and whispered, "I am the end of my line, take me." From the abyss rose Nihaz Ulun, tentacles laced with barnacles, a crown of bone. It stared without eyes. "Your ancestor betrayed me," it said. "You offer yourself?" "Yes," Thomas said, "but not as sacrifice, as executioner." He raised the dagger, Reginald's, silver with etchings, and plunged it into his own heart. The house cracked, the cliff trembled, the sea surged. Thomas's blood fell into the pit. The god screamed, a sound like drowning planets. The chapel collapsed. When the townspeople came after the storm, Blackthorn Manor was gone, nothing but cliff and surf. But Dunsmouth began to heal. Children were born, storms passed, and in the deepest trench of the bay something slept, not dead, waiting. Years later, a little girl found a journal in a bottle. She couldn't read the name, but when she opened it, she began to hear the sea. It said, Graye.